Listen, because I am spontaneously, effortlessly complete, I make sure that you, realizing accordingly, will thoroughly comprehend all events and meanings as I do. Yeah, remember we were just abiding. We were just doing effortless abiding. So if possible, compare this to your sit that we just had. So breathe a sigh of relief in this primordially effortless state. I, universal creativity, guarantee this. And listen, because the nature of mind is spontaneously perfect, I do not teach perfection or non-perfection. Do not divide pleasure and anxiety into two. Be free from hope for nirvana and from fear of samsara. The perspective of the eight causally oriented approaches involves cause and effect. Thus, unconditioned reality is relegated to the background. Hmm, stay here for a second. That's a very potent point. If you're approaching the Dharma, they're referring to the nine yanas here. So Dzogchen Ati Yoga is the ninth yana, but they're commenting. Longchenpa mentions this frequently in many of his texts, well, relatively many, um, that the eight yanas, the previous yanas to Dzogchen, are based on cause and effect. Well, why is that? Because you're actually, for example, the Ma, the Mahayana and the Anu Yoga Yana and all the others, Bodhisattva Yana, Shravaka Yana, Pratyeka Buddha Yana, all these are based on cause and effect. So, for example, you're cultivating merit, you're transforming things in your mind, you're purifying, and you're actually doing something for that, like reciting mantras. Anu Yoga is kind of considered a completion stage yana, or the Mahayoga yana is a generation stage. So in generation and completion stages, you're doing visualizations. And even up until a lot of people like to mix those visualizations in the Dzogchen. And if you're doing a preliminary practice like Koryu Rushin, then that's fine. You know, you do this hum, 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 and all these poses, and or in the Jigme Lingpa approach, you visualize the ahs, and you work with uh, your pranayama, you do the trokur. Yes, that's fine. But here I really like to kind of delineate, kind of make a demarcation here, a straight line, and say these are cause and effect approaches. This is Dzogchen. So here we don't really do a lot of any visualizations, recitations, purification or cultivation practices, because I'm getting the impression from many of these Ati Yoga texts to stay with naked Dzogchen. I've emphasized that before, but I feel like it's worth repeating since it's not that I mind outer tantra being mixed into Ati Yoga. I think it's wonderful if you have a working path like that. But my problem is I've been in Nyingma Buddhism, around Nyingma Buddhism since I was a kid, specifically one lineage, the Paleo lineage, all my life, and I'm still a part of the Paleo lineage. Holiness Pena Rinpoche is still my heart teacher. So that being said, I've been able to witness people stuck in outer tantra for decades. Anybody with a heart and anybody who knows the power of Dzogchen, how liberating and perfect it is for these times, you don't like to see that. You don't like to see people kind of insecure about Dzogchen, saying, oh no, that's a high level practice. I cannot practice it. Yet it's introduced from the very beginning in Nundro, in the Avalokiteshvara sadhana practice that we did 12 hours ago. It's rife with Dzogchen. It's all about Dzogchen. But it's mixing in conventional reality. It's mixing that in. For example, in the Avalokiteshvara sadhana, you visualize an Avalokiteshvara in the animal realm with all the animals, with all the humans, with all the gods and demigods, hungry ghosts and hell beings. What is visualizing Avalokiteshvara really? That means just your compassion is there. You're, so resting in your natural state, resting in pure presence here now, you can once your tension and everything is relieved, there's a natural compassion here. It's the natural energy of your being. And it's actually just like space too. It's everywhere. So you don't need to place an Avalokiteshvara in the human realm, animal realm, etc. Just by abiding in compassion, you're already there. So these preliminary practices are great, and actually the Nyingma tradition does a wonderful job of integrating, but the problem is we're not sifting Dzogchen out enough. And so here, this line is very powerful. Unconditioned reality, or unconditioned truth, I would prefer, is relegated to the background. In all these practices, it's secondary. Here, we're making it primary. Here, you yogis that are here with me, anybody listening who's truly on this path, you are bringing it to the foreground, you see? Big shift in approach there. Okay, so I'll continue reading. They claim that the Buddha is other than the present awareness. Oh my God, this text. Wow, another line. I'm just gonna have to keep reading. I can't just expound on every line, but they're so great. That line is also jam-packed, by the way. They claim that the Buddha is other than the present awareness. Yeah, present awareness is so simple. It's right here. The Buddha is right here. Enlightenment is right here. This awareness that you discovered is your enlightened mind. Of course, you're going to have doubts and narratives about that. You might even apprehend awareness and further the dichotomy, the duality of subject and object, the egoic division that starts the whole show. Yeah, you might uh, do all these things. But if you have a confidence and trust and decent guidance and access to the primary sources, then you're going to know more and more that present awareness is your enlightened mind. You don't need to doubt that. And so many folks are just nonchalant about that. Oh, yeah, I just had pointing out instructions. That was pretty cool. No, you just recognized your enlightened, free, totally free mind. You've stepped into no more suffering, period. I'm sorry that many folks have lost trust in that. I understand. Totally. There's been rampant spiritual abuse. But if you can somehow step on your previous trust and your previous proofs and understand that your awareness here right now, you don't have to create it, is your enlightened mind. Okay? So this is like, so he's still dissing on the previous yanas here. Okay. Okay, maybe I should say critiquing. So we're still talking about the yanas 1 through 8, which includes, remember, Shravaka yana, the vehicle of the hearers, like the monastics. It includes the Bodhisattva yana, so all these Mahayana practices. And then it includes all these tantric practices, the rituals and everything like that, including yoga. So this is like saying that by purifying and transforming the sky, there will be another clear sky that is other than this present sky. But in our way of looking at it, by saying that this present mind is the Buddha itself, and by attending to its intrinsic clarity, incidental conceptualizations are clarified in the dimension of mind as it is, just as we clear up muddy water. Okay, wait, please go back up to the whole. It's a long sentence to the start of the sentence. This is like saying purifying and transforming. Yeah. Okay. Anybody want to take a guess on Okay, this is why I say we should approach Dzogchen purely. It says right here, but in our way of looking at it. Who's Who's our? That's us. That's us yogis that take Dzogchen as a pure path. You see, Longchenpa is saying this is how we approach. This is an approach. We're very. You may not know this because you may not even have heard of Dzogchen before, but we're very unique and revolutionary in the fact that we practice Dzogchen nakedly, what I call Dzogchen proper. But it's only because I keep reading it in the text, things like this. In our way of looking at it, by saying that this present mind is the Buddha itself. That's our approach right there. We have beautiful validation right there for our approach. And so, yes, you're not going to immediately see this as Buddha itself. That's only because we'll imply things, we'll infer things over it and onto it and about it, right? But through the awareness practice, by sustaining the awareness, here it says by attending to its intrinsic clarity, that's awareness. By attending to intrinsic awareness, slowly the confusion about Buddhahood being here is self-liberated. Yeah, very, very exciting, very cool stuff. Your mind is freed up. It starts to become spacious. You're no longer bound by thoughts and emotions. You're not even bound by the body. And you can actually start to enjoy this life in a way more fuller way, a holistic way. So, and not just this life, it just becomes the truth. And you start to have this confidence even that this life, this body is not all there is. This body and this reality that we create in our mind is being sown into the unconditioned. So let's see here. I get a little excited sometimes about this stuff. But in our way of looking at right on, in our textudo. So therefore, this is the path of natural, spontaneous perfection, the primordial yoga, in which the three dimensions of being arise on their own. So we'll continue. How to integrate experiences after meditation. Yeah. I'm going to speak here from my own experience. Right on. And I bet you that the original Tibetan is more or less saying that he's going to speak from his own realizations. So this corresponds to the oral instructions of worthwhile masters. The perspective is unbiased and not subjective. The meditation is the intrinsic clarity which frees whatever arises. The way of life is an unobstructed dynamic flow. So if you're wondering, what do I do now that I've discovered awareness and I'm just resting in pure presence? Well, here it says, go with the flow. The result is the non-duality of hope and fear. Accustom yourself to what these really mean. However, if you have no compassion and are confused about what is right and wrong due to nihilistic conception of openness, this is an error in perspective. When blocked in perspective by this hang-up that is like a dark abyss, petition the spiritual guide, trust in pure vision, cultivate love and compassion, and train your mind in an awareness of impermanence and the karmic consequences of your deeds. In my advice, there are many practices where you cultivate compassion. We do a lot of this stuff. We integrate a lot of these kinds of complementary practices. Okay, but don't try too hard to incorporate some of these practices to Dzogchen. If through obsession with how you characterize things, you start taking internal and external entities to be credible, apart from their being mere objects of your point of view, you are stuck in the perspective that hankers after essence and attributes. This is basically talking about reifying deities and rituals and things like that. In that case, train your mind in the unobstructed absence of any credibility to all events and meanings, and learn that whatever arises is like a dream image which cannot be grasped. When the pure awareness that does not reify appearances arises without any bias or partiality, in the state of clarity, cultivate its ongoing flow without being distracted. And so instead of cultivate there, it's not one of my favorite words. I would say to familiarize with the ongoing flow and the clarity aspect of your mind. Uh, every time they say clarity here, you can think of awareness. So if you feel dull or sleepy and your thoughts wander to objects, stay in a cool room with a high seat, exert yourself, and do physical exercises. When you are distracted by thoughts, which is a pitfall of meditation, train the mind in not grasping after experience with thought. Yeah, I would also advise that when you see yourself in that cloud, it has a feeling to it, a texture to it. When you see yourself, you may even notice the posture changes. You kind of get stuck in that lobe of your brain. And when you notice that, release, even if the thoughts are enticing, even if you feel a strong reason to continue to perpetuate that rumination or that conceptual proliferation, whatever it is, when you have that urge to keep on thinking and thinking and you're trying to, and then you justify it, just continue to release. Release the cloud of the thinking mind. Come back into clear space like it's almost like a feeling. And yes, at first there'll be a you that's kind of coming back to space like awareness. That's in the beginning. Um, but at least you're stepping out of the cloud of thought, coming into space like awareness. Okay? They have two different feelings. We can say experiences at first. So then, when many thoughts may come, do not remain in an internally calm state, but continue to create many thoughts. Oh, yeah, this is a technique. You'll find this also in the Aro Yeshe Jungner text, where you think of as many thoughts as you can. And when you do that, you come to a point of exhaustion and you rest in that exhaustion, okay? So recognize the thoughts as they arise. Then, when no thoughts come, without being distracted from this state of utter sameness, without judgment, integrate with the mental objectification that emerges when external objects do disappear. Excuse me, do appear. All right, let's get into that sentence. One second. Then, when no thoughts come, without being distracted from that state of utter sameness, without judgment, integrate with the mental objectification that emerges. Okay, so when objects appear, that your kind of thoughts about them, your reification of them, anything like that is also within the sameness of uh, awareness. Okay, so they're saying basically, and I think that's a key point too. Sorry to elaborate on every sentence like this, but I feel like it can be useful if we understand. Um, if you actually, the part of your mind that's making the objects, once that softens up, I feel like you're going into a togya. Your reality starts to change, but you're stabilizing in that change. See, we're already on psychedelics. Now, this whole thing is a psychedelic trip. It's an illusion. And that illusion starts to fall apart and you start to sober up. People think when you take psychedelics that you start seeing things. No, you're already seeing things. Actually, the psychedelics, what they do is they break up your constructing mind. And so you start to see less things or think that cartoon that you're making starts to, I don't know, turn into a tie-dye bowl of cereal, whatever's happening there. But your mind's constructing order will definitely, even if we get sick and die, even if you get a little drunk or anything like that, your reality starts to change so easily. So, by doing this, keeping that mental active consciousness during objectification, yeah. So it says, by doing this, when non-conceptual clarity arises, cultivate its uninterrupted continuity. Again, I would say familiarize with non-conceptual clarity. It doesn't arise. Your conceptualizing ceases. Clarity cannot arise. Only your confusion can cease. So I notice an older text. I'm just going to reorient things for consistency. And I'm not going to say cultivate its uninterrupted continuity, familiarize with its uninterrupted continuity. Cultivate, even if you look up the definition of the word, uh, that means you're doing something. That means you're creating something. We don't want to cultivate in Dzogchen. So if you become identified with the sheer presence that comes as pleasure, clarity, and absence of judgment, destroy that identification by training in the proper perspective and examining your condition. In that calm, spacious state with, where whatever appears is not identified with, there is no striving, achievement, meditation, meditator, or haziness. In this uninterrupted, non-conceptual continuity, where openness and clarity are united, train the mind in the dimension that is devoid of any self-identity. Again, I really don't like the word train the mind. That if we look at that word in any other context, it means to condition something. You train a dog. You train in the gym. You train on the piano. You're conditioning something. Here, you're not training the mind. You're actually untraining the mind. You're untraining it from conditioning. Okay. See why so many folks out there are confused? Because all these Dharma texts are really um, permeated, saturated with uh, what is it called? Backspeak? Backtalk? I forget. Where basically things are contradicting each other. On subtle levels, you'd be surprised. We get those words in our head like cultivate. What are you doing? What's your Dzogchen practice look like? Oh, I'm cultivating awareness. How do you do that? Oh, awareness is the unconditioned enlightened mind, and I'm cultivating it. See, it does. It sets you up for confusion. So hopefully, some of the translations will become more precise when it comes to Dzogchen. I can't help but roast these translations, I guess. But this one's still very high on my list. Okay, I like it. It has patriarchal overlays. It has contradictory context, like many of the other texts, but it's still pretty good. So, furthermore, it is initially very important to obtain mental stability towards whatever your meditation object is. Afterwards, everything that arises will have a single taste. This is my experience. Yeah, Shamatha Sutrayana Shamatha can definitely help you, but in Dzogchen, Shamatha is stabilizing in awareness. So the calm absence of thought, followed by thoughts arising, thoughts becoming calm, calmness, and thoughts arising non-dually. These are the lesser, intermediate, and greater levels of familiarity with contemplation. Wow, I almost thought they had it there because they used the word familiarity, but they used the dreaded word contemplation. Contemplation, again, if you look this word up, it means you're doing something, you're contemplating, you're crunching. That is not Dzogchen. So another word that I really don't like. I'm sorry, everybody, if this is bothering you at all. Uh, you know, that's how I roll. I'm gonna. I can't even. It's like a part of me that can't let it slide. We have to be clear on this stuff, and maybe some of these translators will hear this through the grapevine. Part of our revolution of tackling Dzogchen in a pure way, we gotta change this vocabulary, this nomenclature. These semantics are backwards, they're contradictory, okay? Okay, so let's continue. I say it with love. I don't mean to be unkind or anything, all right? I know it's a lot of hard work, and I appreciate so much for this text. Okay. After that, you will experience the absence of credibility about what presently appears. At that time, there can be visions, spontaneous speech, and positive dreams. Yeah, remember what finally it's telling you what life after awakening looks like. There's a dynamic flow. Your body, speech, and mind is still in the dance, in the play. But now it can be a little fun. You can enjoy. So then what appears will often seem unreal. Talk will sound incoherent. Yes. And dreams will be lucid, while everything you do in waking life will be seen to be like a dream. Wow, we could really read this part 10 times. This is going into exactly what life after awakening looks like. Just like the Jigma Lingpa Buddhahood without meditation, at the end of that book, we have the rarity, and in the end of the Longchenpa's treasuries, we have the rarity of somebody actually discussing what it looks like, what enlightenment actually looks like. Okay? So after that, what appears will be liberated into the clear expanse. Talk will resolve into indeterminacy, and dreams will become the natural light. At that time, the state of the excuse me, go ahead, scroll up. At that time. At that time, the state of pure presence will come about naturally. Having interrupted the dreaming process, the errant propensities, the illusory habitual allurements will be destroyed of themselves, because your awareness becomes united with the field of reality that never becomes anything. This is called being in the state of pure and total presence as your primordial basis. Oh, I'm loving that. Yeah, very good. Primordial basis, very good. Um, because your awareness becomes united with the field of phenomenon that, that never becomes anything. This is called being in a state of pure and total presence. And I'll just remind you that's Kadak and Lundrup, right? So, Kadak, primordial purity, is referring to emptiness, and presence is referring to Lundrup, their primordial purity. That's the cognizant aspect. So every time you hear pure presence, you can also think empty cognizance. It's just kind of a different way to put it, and I love that we have these different ways to signify the natural state. And I also like that they're using primordial basis. That's wonderful translation. So, of one taste, like space, this is unobscured, pristine awareness, the creativity of the universe. By cultivating the dimension of your awareness that is without any discursiveness, the dimension of pure being, the final reality, is spontaneously present. Therefore, the dimension of the full richness of being and the dimension of apparitional being arise from that dimension naturally, spontaneously complete. This is the greatness of self-refreshing, pristine awareness. Oh, stay there. I really like that they're using the word dimension here. This translation is actually way ahead of its time for that. I think in our modern days, this is a very useful term because being in your thoughts, it's a dimension of electricity that we're in. It's a cognitive dimension. And then when you come into the clear light awareness, that's also a dimension of your mind. Being in emotions, being in your body, these are dimensions. And we can enter different dimensions. When we think of the past, when we think of the future, there are many of these. So that's a wonderful word choice there. And then also, awareness is called self-refreshing. I really like that too. So let's continue. Being attached to your ordinary dualistic considerations is a pitfall in your way of living. No matter what appears, by applying yourself without being at all distracted from the perspective and meditation, this is unobstructed, powerful way of life will come about with the six senses naturally relaxed. Apply yourself without uh, contradicting this. Okay? Dualistic thoughts of hope and fear are a pitfall of the result. By knowing that this self-arising pristine awareness is Buddhahood itself, you will free yourself. When in doubt, from the obstacle of hoping to obtain something in the future. Wait, let's stay there. The dualistic thoughts of hope and fear are a pitfall of the result. By knowing that this self arising pristine awareness is Buddhahood itself, that line, wow, you will free yourself when in doubt from the obstacle of hoping to obtain something in the future. Okay, so it's saying, yeah, if you have some kind of like stages that you want and you're trying to reach Buddhahood and you have this goal in your mind, that will be freed up by knowing that pristine awareness is Buddhahood. It's here right now. You don't ever access it in the future. But this is another very potent line. I'm sorry to say we don't hear that often, although it's been repeated here in this text. It says, by knowing that the self-arising pristine awareness is Buddhahood itself. Yeah, that's if you ever want to ask, and it says you will free yourself. If you ever want to ask me what the essence of this group is, the essence of our approach, it's we're beginning to let all misconceptions and inferences and all this stuff. We're letting it go and beginning to allow awareness to show us that Buddhahood is here right now, that we can have freedom right now. That is our approach. Yep. Okay, so we can stop here. Thank you so much for listening to my critique. I mean, my reading of this text. Yeah. Yeah. If you're putting up with me, thank you. Believe it or not, it's really fun for me to pick through these texts. I hope I don't sound like a pedantic semantic pedantic. Um, but it's really fun to kind of decode it and make it pure. Here's Ochin. A lot of these words I've looked them up. I've studied these words, and I've tried to make room for their usage. I'm sorry to say that the dictionary definition just is too far off from what we're actually talking about sometimes. Like the word cultivate, the word train your mind. All these things to me are Sutrayana vocabulary.